All right, thank you so much again for joining us. This is Dr. Quisia Gonzalez.
Thank you.
And we had a conversation, we started the first part of this conversation where you were talking about the rationale and the context for why land valuation policy was important, and you talked about Henry George's and sort of the George's school, rather. So I want to, in this conversation, if you don't mind, focus on where people are using land valuation approach, what are some of the policy ideas that people can use today to make a difference.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'm very excited to have this great opportunity to talk about these policies because it's just right in time. It's needed. It's a must. Somebody has to come with a solution. And examples of land value taxation actually here in the United States are several cities in Pennsylvania, like Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, and other cities around that area that had embraced the two-rate property tax, they call. Because if we see, when we speak about real estate, we speak about valuating the building in one half, and the other half is the soil, is the land. And the idea is, I think the most we know about it start to make sense. Land is something that human beings haven't created. Who created land? Well, it's natural. It was there. It's a pre-existing resource. But the building is product of labor. And the idea is to tax heavy the land where the buildings are sitting and allow any improvements done to the building or to the actual construction to be levied a little less than the land value. And what is behind this is that having this in place would allow people to want it more, to improve the property, and also will impeach the speculation opportunity to holding land idle. They will have to put the land in use. And the rationale, as you said, about this is about thinking that first we have to understand how value is created. And value is always created by the human labor. If we think about it, even if it doesn't make sense, but it's true. What we use on natural resources is a pre-existing material that were there. Humans just go and take it and utilize it. When we live when land was free, well, nobody has to fight for land. But now that we live in another era, another decivilized era, well, lands become a very first need for every human activity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you did a really good job when we talked earlier of laying those things out. And I think is so critical. If you would mind talking a little bit about, you talked about the places in Pittsburgh and places in Pennsylvania. What does it look like for people to do policy work, that's based on this issue? What does the public policy look like? Once we got to the point where we understand the underlying values and the roots, and what is it that policymakers can do and that communities can do to make this a real system that they can start to work?
I think that is very exciting in the sense that can be implemented as a local level, because as we know, the laws varies from state to state, and they have different way of taxing and assessing land. And so that, because they have that freedom, they can be implemented without really thinking much. And they have that independence to do that. And I think that the first and more impacting part that will see the improvement is that immediately, as we've seen in Harrisburg, for instance, is the boom in permit and building permit, that people start having the opportunity to wanted to improve their buildings and to make construction, new construction. And that is a problem that you were mentioning, that people of color are facing, lack of housing. So the impact over housing is really tremendous, and that has been seen improve in Harrisburg. I don't know if you haven't been there in the last years around, but Harrisburg is a marvelous city. The first times I was there was 2 years ago, and I see this small town, but very well developed. The streets were clean, and at least the area in the central area, it was. But locals spoke about how the homeless people around the tourist area of the area of where people go to restaurants, they're no longer there. But also in the peripheries, there are more availability of housing, and that is a primary impact. And then the other part that is important for that is that eventually is an arrangement that will grant certain credit to the landowners in order in while they are taxing the land heavier, they liberating the buildings, allowing to tax the burden of taxes, just levy on the land, not on the labor production. Like right now, the majority of policies, tax policies, burden is not a direct taxing, and this is the difference. That will be a direct taxing. You cannot hide the land. You cannot say, I don't own this land, I don't have this land. And also it's very important to address that it's not retrieving, taking over the land from the landowners. If they want to hold it, it's theirs, it's there. The title continue to be, but the tax will be so in that manner that they will have to put the land to use. And that is the idea.
And I think one of the things I think that is so important about what you're saying is that when you take away the incentive for speculation and for land to sit empty, and create incentives for investment for use that's useful to the community, as opposed to things that aren't very useful or for just the rich, but things that really represent public service, it allows a local jurisdiction to have development that's aligned with values. And I think that is one of the really important things about this idea. How would you describe the kind of values that when Harrisburg decided to do this, there's certain kind of values that they were trying to achieve? And if you don't mind, if you think about what kind of city do you help create? What kind of values do you help create among the community when you have this kind of policy?
Well, I think that immediately impacts people's dignity, right? Because the minimum to validate human beings is to have a home, a place that they could call home and they could live in it. And that is the most important part to the beginning. But then also create more incentives to that value that this community created, go back to the service for the public, for the community, and then can allow more to invest in education, to also to health. You know, I think this is the most important aspect of this policy. And there are other examples around United States. Also, Texas, I heard that they also have some, I think it's in the mining or the gas tax that they have. They take all those revenue into the university, so that education is available for the population, because that revenue comes in and put it into the university. Also, we have another example of that is Alaska. Also, Alaska gave back at the end of the year that unearned rent goes back to the whole citizens and as a dividend. And can vary depending how the community operates, has worked. Those arrangements can be done. And the fact that is important here is this is a value created by the community. Land doesn't have value if there is no people that want to use that land. So this is the real rationale, because there is an advantage in the natural resources, the natural advantage of the land. Then we have the private investment and opportunity, the labor put there, and also the value created for community. This also turns into sort of argument, because they say, all those single tax idea doesn't work. Well, it might be, probably won't be 100% efficient, but barely been tried. And now we are in a point that we can try it. We have examples around the world also, other localities where they are being implemented. Like for the longest time, Hong Kong is one example of that. Taiwan is other example of that. And we know that boom that Taiwan has after they separate from China. Taiwanese start to work it out and become this nation that they are right now. Very wealthy, right? And we see society is something that's moved in continuous movement. So we have to bear in mind that must be done so a certain adjustment through the development of society and those changing needs of the society. But implementing a policy like that at least set a very foundation, a very solid foundation to have the revenue, not from the income or from the labor, because if you see right now the crisis we're in, government doesn't have from the take no more, because people are unemployed. From where are you going to take if it's based on income tax in the labor, tax in the labor? And but taxing the land, that is visible, and everybody's utilizing land. And those also that are holding that unearned rent, that privilege of holding that land, that is not created by them. It's created by that community. That should be gone to them and clearly separate the difference between the earned rent and the unearned rent that is directly connected with the land title, property, private property. So I think that it will be important to study a little more about. Okay?
So that brings me to my last question, and that is, what do you think are some of the questions, or even what is the future of this work? What should we be looking forward to? What should we be exploring and playing with?
Well, from my personal point of view, and embracing really with all my heart this idea, and I'm not an economist, but I am a medical doctor, and I think that what is important for me is to create a healthy society. And that healthy society cannot be developed if we don't have healthy individuals operating. So the more that we invest in people, the more that we can become richer, because people will be able and willing to work and give the most that they have. So what I think what I'm seeking is the opportunity to share with other friends, because there are, as a Georges, we have our Georges organization that are specialists in implementation of the policy. So I'm not an expert in the policy, but I'm voiceover. I'm the voice of the idea, and to awaken the people who listen to me right now that you have something to do with this. This is not a strange idea. It's something that directly affects your life.